I'm turning the program over to Korey. I will warn everybody, we're being recorded.
So be on your best behavior.
He's recording, and with the sound and everything, because of course his goal is to teach people. And so he's going to record it so it's available for others. Thank you for coming, Korey, and thanks everybody for coming. So let's learn about it.
Thank you, thank you. And my educational piece, just so everyone's understanding, is from an experiential basis more than medical training or something like that. So take it for what it is. I think it still has benefit, but that's the nature of it. I do want to thank Cheryl for inviting me to come to speak. I want to thank every one of you. I would thank each of you personally, but for now I'll thank you collectively for being here this evening. It means a lot, truly. I'm not just saying that. So, as you can see, I wrote a book. Let me give you a little bit of background about myself, though, before we dive into what the book is about. I'm an Ohio boy. I grew up about an hour north of here in a small town called Rootstown. We had one traffic light when I graduated high school. I think we've upped it to maybe 2 or even 3. So, big metropolis now. I was the youngest of 8 children. This is my family. Lower left is me. My mom had the last 4 of us, but she had to put up with all 8. So I'm sure she would appreciate your sympathy. This is my beloved wife, Molly, who is here. We've been married, it'll be 28 years this April. We met when we were 14 at a camp near here in Millersburg. Our children, Nathan and Kaylee, who are here this evening, who are our joy. They bring truly joy to our hearts. Seeing them grow and walk in wisdom has been just a delight for us, and we're thankful for that. So this is my family. This is my heart right here, you're seeing. And as I went through the things I went through, they became that much more precious, for sure, to me. And last, by way of introduction, I'll just mention that I am what you might consider a rational Christian. I am a Christian, but my understanding is very rational and not a leap of faith into the dark, but a faith based on reasonable evidence. And so that is who I am, and come to everything I encounter in that way. Much like C.S. Lewis said when he said, I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else. And that's a perspective that resonates in my heart. So that's a little bit of background about me. And let's jump into the book. So the first thing I want to draw your attention to is the subtitle in the book. 2 words in particular of the subtitle, the first being candid. It truly is a candid story. I don't sugarcoat anything. You get it raw and real for what the experience was like for me. The incident itself was one thing, but the recovery process, 6 months of which are journaled kind of through here, is a whole thing altogether. The one may seem more exciting, but I think the other has a lot to glean and may be helpful. So that's why I recorded that. The other thing is the word one that I want to draw your attention to. I could have said a, which is a little softer, but I chose the word one to emphasize the fact that this is just my experience with cardiac arrest. I in no way claim to be speaking for what everybody that goes through cardiac arrest will experience after the fact. There's no way I could possibly do that. So I only am speaking to my own personal experience. And then the final thing I'd like to draw your attention to is in the title, I was arrested, not I had a heart attack. And that may seem like a weird distinction for you, but before all this happened, my assumption was that cardiac arrest and heart attack were the same thing. They were synonymous terms. And it took going through this to be educated on that fact that they're not, that they are different things. A heart attack is the blockage of blood flow for the heart, whereas cardiac arrest is more of an electrical issue where the heart ceases to function the way it should. Brain death will occur within minutes. Respiration stops. It's referred to as clinical death. The only next step is biological death, and there's no return from biological death, humanly speaking, right? But clinical death is what I experienced 4 times by the end of the day. over the course of about an hour. And we'll get into more of the details of that. So, heart attack does not equal cardiac arrest. One of the distinctions that's helpful to consider is the fact that the fatality rate for heart attack is about 12%, whereas the fatality rate for cardiac arrest is 95%. And that's in the U.S. Globally, it's higher than that. About 1% of people survive cardiac arrest on a global scale, according to the research that I was able to do. So, generally speaking, it's something that takes you. There are physical differences between cardiac arrest and heart attack, which I've already kind of touched on a little bit, and Korey will be able to illuminate that a little bit more for you from a medical standpoint. What I can share with you is the experiential difference. So I had both. I had a heart attack, which caused the cardiac arrest. And the recovery that I've had to go through, I would say, is probably 5% related to the heart attack experience and 95% to experiencing cardiac arrest, to clinically dying. It does a number on the mind. I can just tell you that. And people that I've spoken to or heard speak about it who have also experienced cardiac arrest had much the same thing to say. So let's jump into the reasons that I wanted to write this book. There's 4. The first one was I really wanted to honor those people that saved my life. And this starts with a Facebook post that's included in chapter 1 of this book. But then I transitioned it or continued it, if you will, into a full book because I wanted to go beyond just the first experience itself, but to really bring out the other aspects of it. But the reason I initially wrote that Facebook post largely was I just wanted to honor these people who literally, without question, saved my life. Without them, I would be dead, 100%. Secondly, to process what happened. As I mentioned, there is a mental struggle of experiencing cardiac arrest, recovering from it, trying to make sense of it, what just happened. And so that was part of the writing as well. I wanted to offer a cautionary tale for people. I wanted it to be something that would be beneficial to others. If this isn't beneficial for you by the end of this evening, then I've failed. I really want it to be beneficial in some way, shape, or form for each of you. And then finally, to encourage people who have been through or may go through similar level of trauma, I want them to particularly understand the fact that they may need help that they didn't expect to need. For me, a lot of that was on the counseling side to kind of, again, process what happened, what was that like, why do I see the world differently than I did before, and in what ways, and what do I do with that? Those kind of questions were just bombarding my mind, and still are in some ways. The contents of the book. The first chapter, not to skip over the introduction because it's worth reading too, but the first chapter is the Facebook post originally that details the events of that day, and a little bit that I wished I'd included, so I added it on. The second chapter is on heartfelt gratitude, and that's specifically directed to the people that saved my life that day. The third chapter, Continuing Kindness, is my attempt to just recognize the people who supported us after the fact in some ways that were incredibly meaningful. Getting the word out actually is partly about a Fox 8 piece that they did. A reporter came to the house and interviewed me. University Hospitals had contacted me to see if I would be interested in being interviewed about what happened because they thought it might be beneficial for other people. And I said, count me in, absolutely. The same thing I'm saying to this moment. If what happened to me could benefit somebody else in any way, you don't have to ask. Count me in. As well as it also includes some warning signs about heart attack, because again, I wanted the book to be beneficial, so if somebody reads this, they will be more informed about what to look for if they themselves are experiencing a heart attack or if somebody around them is. The recovery updates are the actual updates that I wrote and sent to people who were helping us through an online fundraising platform that a couple in this room set up for us very kindly and contributed to themselves. So these are the updates. These are exactly what was happening to me through the course of these months. Recovery adjustments, this may be the most interesting chapter because the thing that struck me more than anything was all of these adjustments that I had to make. I would say I made adjustments, but it wasn't like that because I didn't really have much of a say in the matter. These were adjustments that were coming my way whether I liked it or not. And I'm going to read you just a brief excerpt from that chapter right now. This is on the adjustment as it relates to schedules. You should know that these sorts of medical emergencies, like most things in life, don't have the common decency to wait for our schedules to clear. For us, my arrest occurred while our 19-year-old daughter was in Navy A School, which is the Navy's first level of schooling following basic training. The reality of being 1,200 miles away when her dad almost died was very upsetting for her and for us. We cried together when I first told her over FaceTime what had happened. I used FaceTime to call because I felt she needed to have the reassurance of seeing my face before being told what had happened. Incidentally, 4 months after the arrest, our son flew the same 1,200 miles away for Air Force basic training. Fortunately, by this time, it was much easier. In addition, both my wife and my mom lost their mothers less than 6 months before my arrests. Those losses, compounded with this new burden that I felt I was putting on them, seemed like an excessive and unfair weight for them to have to bear. But life is like that. It doesn't wait for our permission to be given burdens to carry. Interestingly, Molly recently shared with me that she felt like it was actually a mercy that her mom's death and my arrest didn't coincide. Her comment reminded me that so much of how we experience trials really is a matter of perspective. All right, so at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you back with me to November 22nd, 2022, and walk you through those events with me. And I've written this part out because there are still aspects of kind of my ability to think clearly that are a bit compromised, so there's some things I just need to kind of write down to get clear. So that's where I'm coming from with that. At this point, I'd like to take you with me back to 11/22/22 and give you a glimpse into that day by sharing details not really covered in my book, but which dovetail nicely. For a late November day in Northeast Ohio, the weather that day was nice, mostly clear skies with temperatures between 40 and 50 degrees. The leaves had mostly fallen. I had a relatively easy stump grinding job that morning, 4 small stumps for a friend up in Streetsboro, about 10 to 15 minutes north of our home in Kent. I finished the job without incident, feeling perfectly fine. I loaded my stump grinder and I headed home. I was about halfway home before I felt anything weird going on. What I first felt was something off in my chest. I can describe it as pain, but I can also describe it as pressure or even tightness. What I can tell you is that the sensations I was feeling really weren't like anything I'd felt before. Not because it was worse than anything I'd felt before, but because it was so localized. I just kept thinking how strange it was to be in the dead center of my chest. I guess my natural inclination was to find some reasonable thing to associate it with, and the association I latched onto was indigestion. For breakfast that morning, I'd had the rest of my steak from a previous dinner, and I assumed that my out-of-the-ordinary breakfast was the culprit. I kept thinking how I just needed to get home and stretch out and ease my indigestion. So I continued heading home, thinking I should be there in less than 10 minutes. Just a few minutes from home, I recalled that I meant to put some air in one of my trailer tires, so I stopped at the last gas station on the way. I couldn't believe how my indigestion was getting so much worse. I got back in my truck again and continued heading home. I had this nagging feeling, though, that this might not be indigestion. Maybe I'm having a heart attack. This took my thoughts immediately to Molly, Nathan, and Kaylee. I needed to tell them that I love them in case it might be my last opportunity, so I quickly texted the I love you emoji in our family text message group. It was a sobering thought to do that, and it still grips me. Maybe a minute later, I pulled in across the street from our house where I always parked my trailer. The sensations I was still trying to discern continued to get worse, but I felt like I had to unhitch the trailer. As I went through each step of the unhitching process, the pain was growing like a volcano, about to erupt. But I stubbornly continued to assume, even insist in my mind, that it was an eruption of indigestion pain and nothing more. I couldn't have imagined it was actually plaque erupting in my bloodstream. With the trailer finally unhitched, I got back in my truck again and drove it to its normal parking spot next to the house. All right, now I can go inside and stretch out, I thought. As I approached the porch, I just wanted to know what was happening to me. My discernment, again, was at a loss. I got to the front door, unlocked it, and opened the door, struggling to do both because of what, at this point, felt like unbelievable tightness in my chest. I set my water bottle on the dining room table and immediately lay down on the floor. I hoped I could relieve my discomfort by stretching out on the floor, but I just couldn't shake the thought that I might be living my last moments. Should I get up? Or should I just resign myself to what's happening? That's what I actually thought. I remember that at this point, two clear thoughts grabbed me. The first was that I could check my blood pressure cuff. I could check my blood pressure cuff and grab my blood pressure cuff and check my blood pressure to see if I was, in fact, having a heart attack. I thought for sure that would tell me. My second thought was that if I did die here on the floor, it would be Nathan that would find my body when he came home on lunch break. And I just couldn't imagine him having to find me lying here. I got up, grabbed my blood pressure cuff, and took my blood pressure, which wasn't really any help. But I was up now, and I had the presence of mind, at least, to Google heart attack symptoms. This whole time, the tightness or pressure or pain was really getting to me, but I couldn't tell if the sensation was staying in the center, if it was expanding from the center of my chest. I did notice I was sweating a lot, and I remember it felt like someone was sitting on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I was feeling pretty desperate, and fear was beginning to really hit me. The list of symptoms I saw online made it clear. Call 911 right now. In a second, I'm going to play that 911 call for you. And I want you to understand that we live just a few minutes from each of the two fire stations in Kent, so I knew that they would come quickly. What you'll hear me responding to her with are really short answers because, again, there was pressure making it hard to breathe, hard to speak. I was also trying to figure out what was going on, and so there was just great confusion in my mind about what was happening. I was also holding back tears the entire time, thinking this may be it. And what you won't be able to tell is that I kept thinking, should I ask her to relay something to my family? Because this might be my last chance to do that. And I never did, but it was just but I could barely talk, so I didn't know what else I could do. So I'll play that call for you right now. It's a few minutes long.
911, what's the address of your emergency? What's going on there?
I feel like I might be having a heart attack.
Okay, I'm going to start the paramedics towards you. How old
Thank
are you?
51.
Okay, are you home alone?
I am.
Okay. Can you describe your chest pain, where it's at?
It's kind of all over my chest, but in the middle.
Okay. Do you have pain anywhere else? Do you have pain anywhere else?
My shoulders are tight.
Okay. How long have you been feeling like that?
About 20 minutes.
Okay. Is the pain changing for you when you're breathing or moving?
When I bend over, it's worse.
Okay. Are you sitting down right now?
Yes.
Okay. Are you short of breath?
Yes.
Are you in pain trying to breathe?
Sorry?
Are you in pain breathing?
Somewhat. It's discomfort. I don't know if pain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you nauseous or have you thrown up?
I feel lightheaded.
Okay.
I don't know about nauseous. I haven't thrown up.
Okay. Are you sweating right now?
Yes.
Do you have rapid heart rate with your chest pain?
It feels like it.
Do you have any history of rapid heart rate?
I have high blood pressure.
Okay. Do you have any nitroglycerin?
No.
Okay. Have you ever had a heart surgery or a previous heart attack?
No.
I have to ask this last one. Have you recently used cocaine or crack or any other illegal drug?
No.
Okay. Just try to remain sitting in the most comfortable position that you can. Just try to stay calm and control your breathing. I do have the paramedics driving to you. Can I just have your first name, please?
Korey.
Korey. Is this your best phone number?
Yes.
Okay. It's up to you if you want to stay on the phone with me or not.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want the paramedics to come to the front door?
Yes.
Okay. Is the front door unlocked?
Yes.
Okay. Is it okay if they just walk right in?
Yes.
Okay. Where are you at in the home?
Right inside the door.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, let's just keep the line open. If you're feeling worse, then just let me know what's going on, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Oh. 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 Tingling on my fingers.
You're numb in your fingers?
Yeah. Mm.
Okay, it sounds like they're pulling up in front of your home right now, okay?
Okay.
All right, I'm going to let you go then. Talk to the paramedics, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I know a lot of that was silent, where there was just, normally that's an awkward thing in a group, right? You're not supposed to do that, radio stuff, whatever. I don't care. The point of that was to let you feel the weight, W-A-I-T and W-E-I-G-H-T. And they came quick, relatively speaking. They were there so quickly. So that was the 911 call. On December 1st, and again, this all happened at the end of November, on December 1st, I was able to go to the fire department, and I just wanted to reach out and connect with any of these guys that saved my life. I didn't even know specifically who had been on the call at that point. While I was in the hospital in ICU, I got names of people in the cath lab that I was in, because I wanted to thank each of them, personally, but I didn't know the people in the fire department yet. So I went up to there on December 1st, and I actually got to talk to the guy who did CPR on me for several minutes. And he's the guy that just so happened came out to talk to me. And this is just a brief excerpt, just a couple minutes of what was about maybe 30, 35-minute conversation with him. So what I'm curious about is I could obviously see my perspective in the ambulance, and then I looked out the back window and I saw we were kind of where 261 dead ends.
Yeah.
And it had to be within moments after that. And then I remember coming to, and I had the strangest double layer of reality vision sensation. It was, and I couldn't get it to go away. It was kind of freaking me out. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah.
But I'm really curious, from you guys' perspective, what all...
Yeah, I guess...
If you remember, I know you guys have lots of calls.
Yeah, but your case is interesting because it all happened right in front of us. We were able to see it progress as poorly as it did, and then as as well as it did. So initially, whenever we showed up, like I said, you looked like you needed help. You were super sweaty. You're saying you had pain right in the middle of your chest.
Yeah.
And we take these classes that are we do what's called a 12-lead EKG. I'm sure you're going to have another 100 of those in your lifetime now. But we do a 12-lead EKG, and if it tells us one thing, then we're going down a specific route of treatment.
Okay.
But we also have to pair that with how you look and how you feel.
Okay.
So if you were showing us classic, I'm having a heart attack right now signs, our EKG didn't quite say that yet. So it was working its way there. I was driving initially, so then Greg was what's called the attendant. So he's going to take care of you, and I'm going to be like his hands, basically.
Okay.
Greg said, hey, we got to go. So we got the cot in there, got you on the cot, and then right about 261 and 59, we're like, this isn't good. And
based on the EKG? Or
no, based on your presentation. So at that point, your EKG went into what's called VTAC. Your heart's going 200 times a minute, but not efficiently.
Okay.
And then you became cyanotic, so your lips were turning blue, and then that rhythm on the monitor went from VTAC to VFib. So VFib is just the bottom part of your heart is just going nuts. It's not doing anything productive. So that's whenever we had to defibrillate you. So we shocked you at 200 joules, I think,
Okay.
Which is normal where we start.
Okay.
And that was right about 261 and 59. Like
Okay.
Greg and I looked at each other. You looked worse than you did, previously.
Gotcha.
So that's when we shocked you. And
Just to kind of give you a little bit of that very impromptu interview that I got to have with him, which was unbelievably healing. Because again, I'm trying to make sense. What happened? What happened? What happened? Any bit of answers that I could get were just feeding my soul. I just needed to know what in the world happened. So the rest of what occurred, they got me to the hospital. I arrested again just inside the doorway of the hospital, so that was the second time, and then twice in what they call the cath lab. It's a catheterization lab, so in my case, they inserted through a vein in the wrist and put 2 stents in my, what they call the LAD, which is the left anterior descending, sometimes called the widowmaker artery. And a widowmaker heart attack is exactly that, when the left anterior descending artery is 100% blocked, which it was in my case. And 50% of blood supply comes through the left anterior descending artery. So you can see why it's pretty much lights out if that blocks. In addition to the LAD, my RCA, right coronary artery, was partially blocked as well. They didn't address that for another month because it wasn't life-threatening. They allowed me to kind of heal up, and then I went back in the cath lab for a procedure, which oddly enough, and if you do happen to read the book, you'll see, was almost more traumatic than the first thing because it went really bad. So that's what happened physically to me. I had the chance to go again, this time with Molly, back up to the fire station. And I just bring this up to share what kind of has prompted me to continue trying to tell my story. And it's the response of the Kent Fire Department as they posted on their Facebook page. There are good days and bad days at the fire station. Today was a great day. We were able to talk, laugh with, and hug a recent patient of ours. Korey had a heart attack and his heart stopped twice in our care. We lost him twice more in the hospital as our crew joined forces with the staff at UH Portage to save Korey's life. And I just read that and thought, that's awesome. I mean, I was able to encourage them. And I had this experience so many times where I would go and just thank them thinking, who wouldn't, right? Who would not go and thank these people who just saved your life, literally? And they would say things like, we don't often get that. And I remember asking them, I said, why is that? Is that because people don't survive? Or is it because they just don't come to thank you? And they said, some of both. And of course, with my situation, the odds of survival are so slim that that's obviously part of it too. I'm going to come back up for questions, and I hope you have some, because I think that'll be the most beneficial use of our time. If you have questions for me that I can answer, I'm going to invite, if Molly's comfortable with it, and Nathan and Kaylee to come up if you have questions for them, because again, this isn't something that I went through, this is something we went through. Anybody that's how we bear one another's burdens, right? We experience that with one another. And that's definitely true with traumatic or major types of incidents like this. The thing I wanted to touch on, and this will surprise you, is sleep. The importance of sleep. And here's why. 3 reasons. First of all, it was without a doubt, I'm sure, a major factor in my heart health. Lack of quality sleep, sleep deprivation, particularly if you don't get what's called deep sleep, which is the non-REM 3rd stage of sleep, which is where your brain actually dissipates toxins from the cells through something called the glymphatic system. It works primarily during that stage of sleep for the entire day. It happens largely at the first part of your sleep, and it pretty much doesn't happen hardly at all outside of that time frame. So if you aren't getting deep sleep, that level of sleep during that pretty specific time, those toxins continue to build up. That's just one aspect of the detrimental effects of sleep deprivation. So getting good sleep is super important. The second thing is regarding sleep, I've been craving it like you wouldn't believe ever since all this happened. In part because when I was defibrillated, one of those times or more, an implant that I have for my sleep apnea, which is in my case obstructive sleep apnea, was fried. And so I haven't been able to use that to get any good sleep since all of this happened. So you can imagine at a time when I need more than anything, deep sleep, healing sleep, I can't get it. I'm fighting for it. And the third reason is that first arrest for me, it felt more like falling into and coming out of sleep than anything else that I can associate it with. So you can imagine what falling asleep now sometimes feels like. I have to try to separate the fact that I'm not dying, I'm just falling asleep, just falling asleep. So that association is still, as you can tell, apparently, still very rooted in my mind, and needs, I need to continue to work on that. One thing I'll just mention so I don't forget, and then I'll take questions, or we can take questions. If, again, I didn't prep my wife on this because I knew she'd worry. When you've been married 28 years, you know what things to spring and what not to spring, right? So, and I do love my wife, so that helps. These are some things to consider if you're thinking about writing a book. So I don't know if any of your questions might be along the lines of, I've been thinking about writing a book. What can you tell me about that? I didn't necessarily, I mean, what experience do I have, right? One book, for crying out loud. That's not, that's nothing big. But I learned a lot of, I've gone through a lot of mistakes figuring out how to do that. Self-published it through Amazon, so it is available on Amazon if you're at all interested. But these will be on the table back there. They're just things to consider if you think you'd like to write a book. So, questions?
Well, you know how they say exercise is important for your health. Well, once you've gone through what you did, do you worry if you exercise it might cause harm, or are you into exercise?
Well, I'm not into exercise like, oh, I can't wait to exercise. I was in sports in school. I was a wrestler, so I mean, I knew what it's like to work out, and I enjoy that. I like doing physical activity, that kind of thing. But running doesn't do anything for me, and I mean, it does something for me, but I don't like it. So the exercise at first, I was very sedentary for the first weeks and even months until I was approved to go to cardiac rehab. Because it happened in November. I wasn't due to have that second stent procedure done until a month later. So there was still this blockage that wouldn't really allow me to do cardiac rehab. I had to wait an entire month just for that. I lost muscle mass. I've lost a lot of weight. I've lost 45 pounds since all this happened. So, I was heavier, obviously. And some of that's through the heart-healthy diet, eating a heart-healthy diet. And some of it initially was this relationship that I had with food, and I looked at food after all this happened almost as, like, I'm not interested in you. You are, I'm sure, part of what put me in this position I'm in. And everything just seemed very surreal. Like, I couldn't tell what was reality for weeks. I would look at people and I go, I don't know if you're here or not, really. I don't know if I'm here or not. Like, I couldn't tell what was real. But in terms of the exercise, once I got that cardiac rehab spot, so what you're doing is super important, obviously, and I was hooked up to an EKG, and they could tell me if you're having a problem or not having a problem. It was like freeing. I was so excited about it. So that's the first time I've ever been super excited about exercise.
You're great, Korey.
Thanks. Thanks. That's my father-in-law. He has to say I look great. Other questions, please. Don't hold back.
Do your parents have health issues? Because I was sharing with you, my dad had a heart attack.
Right.
Is it hereditary for you and your family?
So the only thing that is even closely related is my maternal grandfather died of a dissected aorta, and a dissection, when it comes to arteries, is the inner lining of the vein or artery. Maybe is it veins and arteries that can dissect? Breaks loose and it blocks fluid. So he died at 63. I was 51 when all this happened. My father lived to 85-ish, and he died, 5 or 6 years ago. My mom, as far as I know, doesn't have anything. There's nothing hereditary that was a red flag, or even really a yellow flag. You had a question? Is it?
Were you active at all before all of this happened?
Physically active? Yeah. Like I'm not a fitness nut by any means, but we would walk regularly. My wife and I would along the river by our house, and I did stump grinding. So it's a pretty physically demanding job, but in spurts. You know, it wasn't like consistently working out. So not as active as I should have been looking back on it. And I struggled with that weight for the longest time. I mean, here I was at 51, and I'm like, when will I ever lose some weight? And it took something like this to really register how much it matters. So I'm thankful for that. It's this one column, because all of these things are like columns, right? And they kind of aren't necessarily connected. The column of weight loss, doing great. Yeah, I feel good. These other things, working through them. Other questions, please.
Do you struggle with the PTSD and the emotional part of the after your event? And if so, what do you do to manage that?
Good question. So I had the privilege of actually meeting with a cardiovascular psychophysiologist. When all this happened, and I went into rehab, I said, is there anybody that I could talk to about some of the stuff that I'm wrestling with in my mind? They happen to have somebody who works at Kent State University. He's a prof at Kent State University that typically sets patients up, cardiac patients up with his grad students. When we talked, he felt like I wouldn't be a good fit with one of his students. He wanted to talk with me directly. So we talked for about an hour and a half that first time, and typically that's all he would do. Then he would line you up with a student. He met with me a second time for a similar length of time. And then as time went on, when I got just past writing this, about month 7, 8 or so from the incident, I started really struggling mentally. The death-sleep association was based largely because of how tired I had gotten over time. My ability to manage fighting that mentally was just depleted. And so I called him, I said, I don't know how this works. I'll pay you out of pocket, whatever it takes. Can we meet? Can you meet with me? Because he was so helpful. And he was like, hey, no problem. I'll come over. We'll meet. Don't worry about it. So we met a couple times, him and I once, and then him with Molly a second time. And he said, you would, without a doubt, have insomnia and you have PTSD. So yes, that has been a big part of it for sure. And the thing that I feel really grateful for is that I don't see that PTSD diagnosis as a permanent state. And I've experienced it lessening in its grip on my soul. So that's been super encouraging. How that's happened, it's hard to say. Sometimes, time and experience, you just realize something isn't happening that you feared would happen, and that slowly chips away at the thing that's kind of got a grip on you. Some of that, I'm sure, is part of it. I wish I had a better answer for you and could tell you outright, like, this is the silver bullet or, whatever, but I don't know that there is one. And it probably depends on the person. One of the things that I noted in the book that, to me, was a profound lesson through all this is that we bring all of who we are to every new season that we face. So what I came into the season that I faced with was some struggle with anxiety and depression, was my weight issues, that kind of thing, hypersensitivity, things that make up who I am, both things that are a wonderful gift and a curse on the other side of that coin, right? Like hypersensitivity. But then you apply those things in this situation that you're in, and then what does it look like in that context? And you kind of learn these things about what's happening. So for me, it's always been this journey. I'm super introspective and a thinker and try to wrestle with things, and I err too much on the side of independence. So I definitely stepped out of my comfort zone to go to counseling. I went to an additional counselor besides this guy I mentioned. One guy for about 5 sessions, and I found that he wasn't a very good listener of all things for a counselor. So I said, next. And so I met with another guy, and he was much more helpful. And so I'm glad I went to that. And I wanted to be, again, upfront and hear about the fact that seeking help, seeking counsel is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's smart. Getting good counsel is obviously important. Not just any counsel will do, but getting counsel is, of course, wise. Yes?
What are your goals now?
Hmm.
You going back to work? You went back to what you did, or are you doing something different?
I sold my stump grinding business. The Loughry Ventures that you mentioned is kind of an umbrella I have that my stump grinding business was under. So the guy who I had doing the stump grinding work for me while I did quotes and that kind of thing, he was willing to buy the business from me. So it just comes in payments and they're not that big. So I've essentially been unemployed for over a year now, and that's been a big struggle. So one of my goals is to be employed. But you can see what a challenge it is in knowing what I'm capable of doing that won't stress me more than I can bear, but I don't want to be a wimp about it either. So that's, you know, maybe some of my pride which needs addressed, but that's the struggle.
Where would you put your physical recovery in terms of percentage of normal? Are you 50, 60, 80? Where would you put yourself right now?
That's a great question. And I've been tracking it in that exact mindset too. And I would say that in the last month, 2 months at the most, I feel like 90%. Yeah, physically. So what you're seeing, you know, even me breaking down and stuff like that, that's doing great. So, and there's nothing wrong with breaking down, right? It's okay. That's part of the way we're wired to handle these types of things, is to really deal with them. So, yeah, thank you. I appreciate your questions. Any other questions? And again, my kids or my wife may be able to field a question. Maybe they don't want to stand up, but if you're wondering what it was like for any of them. But Nathan, you had a question.
I was wondering if you could talk about your new diet a little bit.
That's
Okay.
what I was just going to ask.
He read your mind. My son is a mind reader. I don't know if I mentioned that. Yeah, it's a special gift he has. You know. Diet. So low sodium, no saturated or no trans fats, low saturated fat. Maybe I'm supposed to have no saturated fat. I don't do the diet to the T. I really don't, but I do way more than I ever have for sure. Low carb, low sugar. Help me out, Korey. What other things are part of the heart healthy diet that I'm missing? Lots of vegetables. For sure. Yep, eating lots of vegetables. Healthy oils, for sure. Yep, exactly. The Mediterranean diet rings a bell for sure with me. We have much more olive oil than we would have ever had before. Avocado oil. There are healthy fats. There are unhealthy fats. That's where, again, I'll speak to what I can speak, but don't take me as an authority on nutrition.
How much is your water intake?
I've always been a pretty good water drinker, so yeah, I try to drink a lot. Now I feel convicted. We're all in this together. Thank you. Yeah, Mike.
Hi. Any thoughts on how your sleep deprivations you had prior to brought this on, or was part of the issue itself? Because I know that you struggled with that for a long time.
Yeah, so in 2014 I was diagnosed with sleep apnea, obstructive sleep apnea. There's obstructive sleep apnea where the airway is blocked physically. There's central sleep apnea where the brain constricts the airway for, I think that's the one that they really don't understand quite why that's working that way. And then there's, oddly enough, one that's, I forget the name of it, where it's in my notes, but I'm not going to turn the page, where if the obstructive sleep apnea is addressed, central sleep apnea kind of kicks in. Yay. So you're still dealing with it. I thought that I had moderate to severe obstructive sleep apnea, which is what I wrote in the book. It was just a couple months ago I went to the sleep doctor again. She brought out my notes from 2014, and I actually had, 30 on the AHI scale, which is apnea-hypopnea index. 30 is severe. I was at 58, which means in an hour's time, I experienced 58 episodes of either apnea, which is full blockage, or hypopnea, which is partial blockage or strained breathing. So essentially every minute of the night. From 2014 going back probably a couple of decades, honestly, that was taking its toll, just wearing me down. And depression was a battle because, you know, your mind doesn't function well when these things, like I mentioned with the cellular waste through the glymphatic system is hindered by not getting deep sleep. So that sleep issue is still in effect. Unfortunately, I was CPAP intolerant, which qualified me to get this implant. They call it Inspire therapy. I got it done through the Cleveland Clinic up in Cleveland back in 2016, but it got fried, no good. I can't have any surgeries because of the blood thinners I'm on until I'm off of that. My next appointment, which I was expecting 6 months to a year after that, I could get off those blood thinners, have surgery, and move forward. Here we are. February 6th, 9th, something like that is my next cardiologist appointment, and I hope that she'll clear me to get off those meds, get the surgery, get this replaced. In the meantime, I'm using what's called a BiPAP, so that's bi-level positive airway pressure as opposed to continuous. Different pressure for inhalation versus exhalation. It's a little bit better for me, but it's still a nightmare to use. Some people love them. I don't want to down CPAP or BiPAP at all. My brother, Kevin, has been helped greatly. If your doctor recommends it, don't fight it. It can be really, really helpful for people, but for me, it hasn't been super helpful. So I'm still fighting that a lot. Just trying to cope as best I can, and fighting the issues again, like with the employment issue. For me, for any of us, that's such a huge piece of, I don't feel normal, I'm not providing. That's really discouraging, incredibly discouraging at times. That kind of thing, while again trying to fight for sleep. So.
Does that mean you snore a lot?
The first night that I turned the Inspire therapy on, my wife told me the next morning she reached over and she checked to make sure I wasn't dead. Because I had snored so much up to that point, and this thing just kicked off my snoring completely. So now, I don't know. I'm not awake to tell you, but she could tell you if I'm snoring a lot. I don't.
Well, with the machine on, you don't not breathe, so with the machine on, it's pretty quiet and you're breathing, so.
Yeah.
I suppose without it, you're probably more of a snorer.
That keeps the snoring down for sure a lot. And also sleep position is something that I've learned a lot about too. I've had like 5 or 6 sleep studies, and through each of them you learn different things. One is the optimal sleep position for me when I got the best sleep. So I actually invented my own pillow that will keep me in that position, all this kind of stuff. So you get creative, right? Mad scientist kicks in when you're desperate, and so that's what it has for me. So I'm probably past time. We're about 5 minutes past time. I don't want to.
That's all right.
Okay.
We're okay.
Other questions? Please don't hesitate.
So I'm a retired teacher, so when you were in school, did you love writing?
Oh, did I love
Now
writing?
you're an author.
Yeah. No, I don't know that I would say I loved writing. I didn't love writing for assignments. For me, I process things by writing them down, and I've always wanted to communicate as effectively and clearly as I possibly can. That's always been, since I was a child. For whatever reason, that always seemed like that really mattered. So I've definitely thought about that a lot and tried to put what I can into it. I don't feel like I'm a great communicator, but I do okay. So, and writing, again, for me, that's where I can sit down and I can really think it through. The process of writing this was unbelievable. Hundreds of hours, edit after edit after edit. It was half this thickness when I first, got a author's copy sent to me, and thought, no, I got to change this. And so the problem is there's this perfectionism thing. I had the self-published June 9th, and then again on June 19th. So I changed quite a bit, and so I enjoy writing. I hope it's helpful for you all if you do get a chance to read it. I really hope it's beneficial and meaningful for you.
Do you plan on writing another book?
I do. That's my daughter, Kaylee. I want to write a book called Listen, because I feel like it's something that we as people generally don't do very well at. And we love people best by listening to them. So I want to write a book because I think I have some thoughts on what might be valuable for being a good listener.
That's why we're all here.
You guys have all been wonderful listeners. Truly. Yeah, Mike.
In the kind of work I do, I work in a wellness department, and 2 of the biggest things that I see on a daily basis is the lack of sleep.
Mm.
The other one is nutrition.
Mm.
And there's a lot of wonderful things that you can do with that.
Yeah.
Because I know you're learning that.
Yeah.
It's been with you for that journey as well. Caldwell Esselstyn wrote a book, or actually a documentary called Forks Over Knives. It's a little extreme because he's talking about total vegan.
Okay.
But if you ever get an opportunity, and if you read or see the documentary, it's wonderful because it explains a lot about what's been going on.
Okay.
And it can be very, very helpful when it comes to turning the world around. Esselstyn worked for the Cleveland Clinic for a lot of years. In fact, he married I think it was the granddaughter of the guy who started the Cleveland Clinic.
Oh,
Granddaughter.
okay.
One of the 2.
Okay.
But he used a different approach rather than doing a lot of medicines, as she was talking about, and using nutrition to do a turnaround. So
Yeah.
it's something that you can at least sit down and look at and pay attention to. And if you have trouble sleeping for a long period of time, get to somebody to help you with that, because it is critically important that you get good sleep, as you know.
100%.
And certainly with the toxin buildup, that you can get through that, so.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more.
If Molly doesn't mind, a question.
She'll be fine. I can vouch for her. She will be. I have more confidence in her than she has in herself, but I assure you she.
What was it like for you going through this as a spouse?
Oh, it's terrible. Terrible. I'm very glad I didn't know about it for a couple of hours. So he was already, he's had his ambulance ride, he was in the cath lab, and they were trying to notify his emergency contact. So they got into his phone eventually, took him a couple tries. They called me on a different line. I didn't pick up because I didn't recognize it. I was at work. Finally got his passcode to open up his phone. It said it was Korey, so I picked it up. And then it was a woman, so I knew immediately that something was wrong. And then she said, your husband's at the hospital at UH Portage, and he has had a heart attack, and you need to come. He's stable, but you need to come. And I didn't have any words, didn't have any, I'm just kind of like, I think I was stuck. And my boss came up the stairs, I'm a nanny, and she was home working downstairs, and she came up the stairs and kind of saw me, and I think she's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, Korey's had a heart attack. And she said, go, and then I kind of unfroze, and then the person on the phone, she was, I think she was just wondering what was going on, and she said, you're coming, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I'm coming. And then when we went, they met me at the door, talked me through what was going on, and then had me wait in a room because they were still working on him at that point, putting the stents in his heart. And then, so I'm glad I didn't know about the emergency part. He was in care, and there wasn't anything I could do. So I'm glad I didn't have to go through that part of it.
Me too.
The tricky parts are when there's other times when he's had pain or pressure, and I think that's common too after people have these kind of events. Every little sensation, or is it happening again? And we've been through a couple of those things, and that makes me even gladder I wasn't there for the big one. But what else?
Did you go to counseling with them?
I went one time. Yeah. Yeah, I think we were just kind of having some communication things, and yeah, that's what that was. I'm glad he went to that, and that was really, really good for both of us. Yeah. That's rough. I'm glad. I feel like we're on a better
Yeah.
trajectory. Yeah. But it's brought us closer together too, something that we've been through together and been able to support each other.
There's one very raw window into an incident between Molly and me in the book that you'll be interested to read. It's it was of the level that I wanted Molly's permission to even include it in the book, because it was that kind of raw, but it will give you a glimpse as to what was just where I was at. Not a moment I was proud of, for sure, but reality. So thank you so much, each and every one of you, for being here this evening. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and to listen, to care, and hopefully you will be able to take something from this that will be a benefit to yourself, but also to the loved ones around you, perhaps even a stranger that you see maybe showing signs of a heart attack, and you have a better idea or sense of what to do. So thank you all.
Thank you.